In the first part of this video, I had to split it up into two. This is the second part here. First one, we talked about pre-American history and how all that was formed and the things they did to help build this country up. But in this one, we're talking about after the Constitution and during that and the things we did to make America what it is today. You know, it's like everything has to be built with time. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And in the last video, I talked about a movie with Denzel Washington. And that movie's called American Gangster, which is a story about a man named Frank Lucas, which was a drug dealer in America. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not even gonna, if you ain't seen that movie, just watch that movie. It will show you a lot of things that you didn't know about America if you haven't seen it. But Frank Lucas was a man that was raised in the hood and in poverty and went from being a poor man in poverty to being a kingpin, international kingpin, dealing drugs and everything underneath the sun that was pretty much used to destroy communities, especially black communities. But before we get into the hood and all that, which is the main topic of this one here, Frank Lucas in the story of American Gangster that Denzel Washington did has a lot of similarities with The Wolf of Wall Street, which is another movie made. And both these movies are based on real events. Now, if anybody that had regular money and was a regular civilian went out and did the things that these guys did, we'd be in jail the rest of our life. If we did anything that you see in Wolf of Wall Street and American Gangster, if we did any of that, life in prison, you would never see light of day again. Now, before I go into that part of this, I want to start off first by explaining something that most people are going to probably have something to say about. Like I said, I'm not making this video to be offensive towards white people or anything, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video that white people did and people of power that was wrong, and how that changed from just being white people to just being people with power doing these things. The main thing that these two movies have in common is they both did some highly illegal and immoral things to other people. But how did this mindset get placed on these people? Well, you got to go back to how the Constitution was written. Imagine George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, also in the room. All men are created equal. It's one of the most popular lines from our Constitution. But at the same time, the people that were writing these statements on paper had slaves. All men are created equal, but you're a slave master. Now, this is the beginning of this mindset of how American Gangster, how someone was able to have this mindset started here. Because that's how it starts. It has to start somewhere, right? Everybody thinks the people that made this country were great people. Half the people that started this country were hateful people. This country was built on hatred and bigotry. And that's why we can't get rid of it to this day. So once they drew up the Constitution, Abraham Lincoln came into office and America was divided. We all started fighting each other, right? Everybody knows this part of American history. Abraham Lincoln came in one of his greatest quotes, "A nation divided cannot stand as one." Everybody thinks he was saying this because he believed in freeing black people. Sorry, tell you, Abraham Lincoln just wanted the country to be united. Because guess what? Abraham Lincoln was a poor farmer. His family were poor farmers that had to work beside black people. Had nothing to do with wanting to free black people. He just wanted control and power. At the end of the day, yeah, it did help out black people, but before you think Abraham Lincoln's a hero and all that, I want to explain something to you. When black people were freed, guess what? We were not counted as a full person. Does this sound like somebody that's not racist would do? And that's where this conversation is going to have a lot of people talking and a lot of people, not feeling me. But this is the core issue of that. You don't have to be going out saying racial slurs to have a racist action behind the stuff you do because you've been conditioned to act that way. He grew up around white people. Abraham Lincoln was a white man. I said, I'm not saying this to be offensive. I love all people. This is facts. And 80% of the people back then that lived in the South, even if they did work with black people, did not like them because we were seen as animals. And why were we seen as animals? Because we were treated as animals. And like I said in the last video, if you treat something, I don't care what it is, anything that has a mind, if you treat it like an animal, eventually it will start to act like an animal. Pavlov's dogs. Crazy experiment. Still affecting us to this day. Now, the problem with all this is that once we were freed, we needed somewhere to live, right? So what did they do? They put all the poor people into a specific area. Now, where am I going with this? Most people can already see ahead. They got that third eye open. I already know where I'm going. If you put a bunch of poor people in one area, what do they normally call it these days? The hood, the ghetto, the trap house, the projects. You know why they call it the projects? Because it's a project to destroy people. That's why. If you were wondering. Crazy, right? Because you think you hear these terms and you don't think about it. But a trap house is a trap. A project is a project to destroy black people. And the hood is in the middle of all that. Now, why am I going into all these different topics like this? Because I'm trying to explain an overall idea that's been placed in American society. Now, the reason why all this came about, at first they left us in the hood. That's where the blues came from. Most people think the blues just came out of nowhere. The blues is made by black people going through slavery. If you break down most hip hop and stuff like that originated from people sitting there singing. And what they do, you ain't got no drums, so you tap and you sing about the things going on in your life. That is the birthplace of music right there. Blues is the father, the rock and roll, rap, jazz, all that. Before you had that, you had the blues. And most of the twangy sounds that we use was because the instruments were not good. You got secondhand guitars and all that. It's not going to sound. So you had to do what you had to do. And that's where the style of most blues comes from. So with that explained now, let me go into this next topic. The Civil Rights Movement. When that happened, Dr. King, Cesar Chavez, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, all these different people in American history fought for equality for everybody. Dorothy Day, all fought for equality for people. Women's rights, black people's rights, civil rights movement was all that embodied. And Dr. King and Malcolm X was the front of that. JFK was also involved. That's why the CIA killed him. That's a whole different topic right there. Because if you notice, every time somebody in history is making a change like Dr. King, they end up getting killed for some weird reason. Sometimes it's, they got poisoned. Sometimes it's, they decided to kill themselves. They did the same thing to Michael Jackson a few years back. They literally said on the news, this man was in a coma. I know y'all remember this story. Michael Jackson woke up from a coma, went and got medicine that he was paying somebody thousands of dollars for and injected himself with it and killed himself. Come on now. You telling me a man paying someone to give him medicine will go and take it himself? Come on, bro. It's all a setup. Michael Jackson talked a lot about social inequality in his music, but most people didn't listen to it. He has a song called one of the lyrics in the song, because I love lyrics. I write songs and I love listening to other people's lyrics. All I want to say is that they don't give a fuck about us. Everybody's heard this song from Michael Jackson, but no one really realized what he was saying. Michael Jackson was emotional during that song because he was telling the truth. Because at the end of the day, they don't give a fuck about us. Tupac said it right after him. UGK said it. Jimi Hendrix said it. Prince said it. So many people in history have brought this topic up, but no one really listens to it. And what they're talking about is a social injustice happening. Now, once they killed off Dr. King, the civil rights movement became huge. So what was the next step? We got to destroy these communities. The same kind of mindset they've had the whole time. We got to destroy these communities before they get everybody on the bandwagon with them, and we can't stop them. So what they do? They took areas where people were poor and they put drugs into it. They put alcohol into it. In the last video, I talked about alcohol liquor stores being on every corner in the hood in America. I don't care where you live in America. If you live in a poor area in America, there's a liquor store on your corner. There's a liquor store a block away from my house. I live around a bunch of poor people. Yeah, they might have a house, but at the end of the day, half the people I live around can't go out and I want to go fly somewhere. I want to go do that because they are struggling financially. Now, when the government put these drugs into the hood, it was just placed there at first. But like I said, conditioning, if you take away people's jobs and then you offer them a job selling drugs, you'll be surprised what you do when you get hungry enough. Real shit. And that's where that comes from. That's why in the hood today, you still see people out there dealing drugs, because after a while, that became part of the society. We were conditioned to be drug dealers, to be violent people, to kill each other. And especially, think about it. It's like the crab mentality. If a crab sees another crab being able to do something it can't do, it will try to kill it. That same mentality was applied to the hood. And after a while, we just started doing it on our own. And all they had to do was just sit back and watch us kill each other. I talk about this in one of my songs in the intro. But because of this mindset that we were placed into, black people still to this day are still doing the same things they did to us in the 70s and 80s. Not even realizing that it's a cycle being continued of violence. And this is why black people are constantly arrested for drug dealing and doing all sorts of illegal stuff, and we're put in jail for years. Then that just further puts that institution mindset on you. So then when you get out, what's the next thing you do? I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before. And all they do is just sit back and laugh at us. From the time we're young, we are programmed to kill. Then they sit back and just watch for a thrill. That's what I mean when I say that lyric in my song. Now, I had a conversation with someone recently and they didn't understand what I was saying, and I had to explain that to them. But this seems like a small thing to do, but you look at movies like American Gangster, and with me explaining that, hopefully that starts to make some things pop in here and light bulbs come on, like, oh, that's exactly what they did in American Gangster. Same exact process. You take away the things someone need and you put the things they don't need around them. Eventually they will be forced to choose the wrong decision. Another lyric I use in one of my songs said, it's all use your mind. If you use your mind and you pay attention, you'll see all this stuff happening around you. Now, poor people in general having this done to them made the hood a trap. aka the trap house, where you keep your drugs at. Make sense now? I say you got to think about it. But it goes even deeper than that. Now in American society, after the 70s and 80s of them just putting this toxin into the black community to destroy us, that's been the government's trick this whole time. I don't care if it's the women's rights movement, civil rights movement, the LGBTY and all that. I don't know all the letters. I ain't trying to be ignorant. I'm just telling you I don't know the letters. But that whole community, I'm calling the alphabet community. They're going to do the same thing to y'all that they did to black people, that they did to women. They put you in this mindset that you have to do this to get this. And then when you don't fall in line, they destroy your community. That's a big reason why AIDS was made. And most people think AIDS just showed up out of nowhere. I'm going to ask you this. Syphilis, gonorrhea, crabs can be traced back all the way to the biblical days almost. AIDS just showed up. And my reasoning for this is going to probably blow your mind. Most people don't even remember this. Magic Johnson had AIDS back in the day. He's still alive. Doesn't have AIDS anymore. Let that sink in for a minute. You ain't feeling what I'm saying. Look it up. Magic Johnson had AIDS. But yet he doesn't have it anymore. But they say there's no cure. They lie right in front of us and tell us BS to trick us. The inception of cognitive serenity. That's where I got that title from for my new album. This mindset that we think we're living in this nice, beautiful world, but in all actuality, we're all being manipulated to act a certain way by the people in charge. Now, with all this said, let's go back to the fact of the hood. The hood has violence in it. People always say that's a bad part of the neighborhood. Don't go there. But why is that a bad part of the neighborhood? Because they want to run the property value down. If they run your property value down in an area, then they can buy it for half the price, build a condo there, and then place rich people there. Gentrification. This is why Harlem is mostly filled with people with money now. Harlem used to be a poverty just everywhere. Everybody in Harlem was poor. And that was the birthplace of a lot of music of today, blues especially, a lot of jazz musicians. That was the Harlem Renaissance. But this is the crazy thing about the black community. Even though they put all this stuff in there to destroy us, what did we do? This is a great part about being black that I love. We have the ability to take things that are meant to destroy us and make it the thing that drives us to be better. That's where the blues came from. That's where a lot of people's passion in music came from, was because they were going through things. And especially me too. I write my best songs, I feel, when I'm going through stuff. The most impactful things I say in music come from me going through stuff. And at the beginning, this was a good thing for black people. We could take negative things and make it a positive thing for us in the hood when they were trying to destroy us. And this pissed them off. It made them so mad. Imagine you're trying to kill somebody and then they take that poison and use it to make something better than anything you've ever seen. Something that touches people's hearts. But this is also the worst thing in the black community that we can do. Because in the long run, we do the same thing still to this day using that. That's why a lot of black people use the N-word. And they don't even realize it. Walk around, and when I say the N-word, I mean nigga. I hate that fucking word. It's a horrible word. Should be destroyed. Should never be said. And when you really think about it, who was the first people to say that word? It was ignorant English people. Nigerian. I'm Nigerian. Okay, nigga. because they were too ignorant to figure out how to say it the proper way. That word was founded in ignorance. But just like most things we do in the black community, and I can only speak on the black community because I'm black. I've seen this my whole life. People use that word to empower themselves. This is a trait that black people are great at. We can take things that are meant to destroy us and use it to empower us. But if you use something that was made in hatred to empower yourself, then all you're doing is making the conditioning even better to be an ignorant person. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. I know I didn't touch a lot of people's feelings saying that. That's the truth. That's where that word comes from, hatred. You don't see white people walking around using racial slurs towards each other as a large community or anybody else. It's always black people because we take things that destroy us and use it to build us up. They used our greatest weapon against hatred against us. And most people don't even think about it like that. But fast forwarding on past all that, let's talk about some rap lyrics. Young Jeezy even said it in one of his songs. First they give us the work, then they throw us in jail. Slipped by most people's mind, didn't even think about it. That's some of the realest shit I've ever heard in my life. UGK said a lot of similar stuff in reference to this. Because the same people that sold you the drugs will most likely be the same people that bust you to take the drugs. And then what do? Recycle it back into the community. And then it continues the hatred that America was built on. And that's why still to this day in America, we have hatred going on in this country and people going around killing each other. People think, well, we can't get rid of this. We can't get rid of gun violence. We can't get rid of this and that. It's because they want gun violence to be in America. I was listening to something the other day and they were talking about when you go to buy a cough syrup, which is another pandemic that's ruined the black community. People drinking cough syrup has killed so many people and rappers. But think about it at the end of the day. When you go to buy cough syrup, you buy too many of them, you got to sign a document and they record that you bought that stuff, thinking you making drugs. And people think, no one ever stops to think, actually, in large amounts on how does the government know that you're making drugs with that? Because they made the formula. If I got the recipe to make a drug and I'm like, oh, he bought all three of these ingredients, he's doing the same thing I'm doing. That's exactly what the government did. And it's a cold-blooded trick they pull on us. You know what I'm saying? This is a topic I can go on days about. I'm going to try to keep it short. This one got long, but that's the overall mindset of it. Now, fast forwarding to America now, we have this COVID shit going around, killing off people, masses amounts of people. They get on news and they say, we've been experimenting with a cure for this disease for the last 5 years. COVID showed up 2020. How are you going to be working on a vaccine for 5 years? Oh, we've known about it. This is the 19th version of the virus. This is all said in the news. Why do you think it's called COVID-19? It's a 19th version of the virus. Now, how would the government know that? So this is all a matter of opinion and perception. This is the way I see it from where I sit in my life. Some people might be going through the same exact thing, wondering the same stuff I'm saying. Some people might not agree with it, but it is what it is. And this is why we have people going off now. Because think about it. You go your whole life. You ain't never had to worry about poverty, losing your stuff, and then people start taking your stuff away. Which brings me to the next issue, or the last issue actually. Gun violence. Why can a human being on this planet go out and buy a gun that's meant to kill massive amounts of people and hold it in their house? I can go down, I have never been arrested. I can go down to a gun store right now and buy a bunch of clips and guns. No one's going to stop me. That's a problem. We have the right to bear arms, but that doesn't mean you need an AK-47. You feel what I'm saying? Because the only thing an AK-47 is good for is killing something. I love eating deer. There's no way you can hunt in the woods with the AK-47. I don't care what anybody says. It's not meant to hunt animals. It's meant to hunt people. And before anybody gets all offended at me and, oh, gun violence, it's not. People kill people. Guns don't kill people. But let me ask you this. If no one that was civilian could buy an AK-47 and a gun that can shoot 600 rounds per minute, you ever think about how many people would still be alive today if we couldn't go out as civilians and buy that kind of gun? Yeah, you can own a gun. Go get a hunting gun, shotgun, rifle. But you don't need something that can shoot that many rounds at one time. It's not necessary. There's no need. We need to stop and start evaluating the stuff that we're doing. Like I said, we are being trained. We're being conditioned to be violent people. And I'm just saying, it ain't poor people usually going out doing this. It's people with money because they're depressed. People that's being put on the outskirts of society, which is the last point of this part I want to bring up. Because of the conditioning and the things we've had done to us, I've talked about in this video, in society have been done, we have a group of people that have been put into the outside area of the norm. And those people, I'm telling you what, when you take away someone's wants and needs, and then you put them in a stressful mental situation, you will get violence every time. And that's the formula right there. That's all you need. That's all it takes. And then next thing you know, you got somebody shooting up a kid's middle school because they're mad because their parents didn't buy them something or some shit like that. I don't even know why the guy did it. Half the people then they go shoot themselves. I don't mean to sound mean, but if you're going to shoot somebody, go shoot yourself. Fuck out of here. You can go shoot everybody else, then yourself. You know what? Go out and get some pussy. How about that? You ever thought about that? Go out and drink a beer or something. Find something in your life to bring happiness. If you're one of them people that just goes around trying to make other people miserable, maybe you need to find happiness in your heart. Because if you don't have happiness here, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, it's the man in the mirror you looking at. Another song written by Michael Jackson. I'm talking to that man in the mirror. You feel what I'm saying? If you look in the mirror and you don't feel satisfied with yourself as a person, over time you will start to destroy people around you. Passe narcissistic clout is unnecessary. We need to get rid of it. It's not about you. It's about the world. If you're destroying the people around you to make yourself feel better, then you're a bum and you're a fool. And this applies to relationships as well. This is why relationships are so messed up now. Relationships should be based in love. And if you love somebody,